Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today we're going to focus on organizing the one thing that tends to take over all of our craft rooms. Let's go. All right, so one of the big mistakes that I think a lot of us end up making as far as 12 by 12 paper storage is storing it horizontally as opposed to vertically. Horizontally means when it's all stacked on top of each other. I think that kind of started with like imitating offices where you have lettered tray trends, or thinking of like mail slots where all of the different colors can fit in the different slots and it looks so beautiful. However, it's not actually super functional, and here's why. When you are stacking things horizontally, it's really easy to get into the mentality of last in, first out. And what I mean by that is the last piece of paper in, the paper on the top, is going to be the paper you're most likely to take out. I know it seems a little bit silly to think, of course I'll have the energy to flip through all of the paper, but more times than not, you are just going to be taking what's on top, and then when you're refilling or putting in new purchases, you put it on top, and it gets into this weird cycle of not actually using your product or being able to access things. If you are stacking a bunch of paper all together, it's going to be really hard to get to that paper that's on the bottom. You're much less likely to use it, and you're not really going to get the most out of your supplies that way. So I am a big proponent of organizing your 12 by 12 paper in a vertical manner. However you choose to do it, have it vertical, because it's just going to be so much easier to flip through, to find what you're looking for, to pull out certain collections or certain colors, and you won't easily be trapped into that last in, first out mentality. All right, so what do I mean when I'm talking about vertical storage? This is an example of vertical storage for 12 by 12 paper. Even if I had those divided slots, I would just turn that cube or whatever it is so that everything could fit in a vertical manner, because I can easily look through, flip through the system, pull out what I need without having to disturb the rest of what's going on. And I think that's kind of the key. You want to be able to access your supplies without upsetting or having to move around all of your other supplies, because once you start having that like domino effect of I have to move this to get to this, and then that's when your room really starts to become quite the mess as you're crafting. I'm a messy crafter, but it's nice being able to just pull out what I need when I need it, and then being able to file it back away pretty easily without having to lift up the stack. That's one of the reasons I think vertical is definitely the way to go. Let's take a second to talk about why I use storage pockets. These storage pockets have absolutely changed the game for me in my 12 by 12 paper storage. They keep collections together, which is one of the reasons I absolutely love them. So for instance, this is a newer collection from the Hip Kit Club. It actually has all of the pieces of that collection together so that I can use all the pieces together until I've gone through a pretty good amount of it, and then I start to disperse it around my craft room. I'm able to organize the collections in whatever way I see fit. For me, a lot of times it has to do with designer who designed it, because I think those styles tend to match. It might be for you seasonal, it might be by color. That's kind of going to be up to you and your style. But these 12 by 12 pieces are genius. I order them in packs of 3. I get them off of Amazon. I will most definitely link them below, but it has really changed up the whole game in how I'm using my kits more often. It allows me to kind of use what I have and to keep it all together for at least a little while. And I know a lot of you get monthly kits and buy kind of project packs, and it can be hard to remember what all came in that pack. So having it all together, at least for the beginning, as you are starting to go through that project kit or whatever it is, then that really helps me at least make sure I'm utilizing as many supplies as I can. All right, can we talk paper pads for a second? Those are those really tempting paper collections that we see at Michael's and Hobby Lobby and Joann's, and it's so tempting to get all of those papers that coordinate so beautifully. I actually do my best to try to avoid paper pads. I find that when I buy the full pad of paper, the odds that I'm going to use all of those pieces or that I love the whole collection are actually pretty small. I would much rather prefer to order, pick and choose individual 12 by 12 sheets that I know I'm going to use. But even with that being said, there are definitely times that I am tempted by the 12 by 12 paper pad, and I tend to not keep them in pad form. And this is what I'm talking about. When you store these vertically over time, because they're heavy, they will start to bend like this, and then your paper will be bent, and that is no good. And then we've already talked about that I don't like to store things horizontally. What I need is them to be in here in these 12 by 12 sleeves. The easiest way for me to do that is to remove every single sheet of paper from a 12 by 12 paper pad and then store it within this holder within this plastic sleeve. And in that way, it serves as individual sheets. I can actually go through a 12 by 12 paper pad and remove the ones I don't like. Maybe I liked the majority, 70% of the pad, and so that's why I picked it up. But there might be some pages that I'm like, there's zero chance I will use that. I can remove those individual sheets. We forget that you can discard 12 by 12 paper. It can be hard. We all love paper. We all think maybe someday I might have just the perfect project for that. But if you don't like it, then why would you keep it in your craft room? Why does it deserve prime real estate, which a lot of our 12 by 12 paper gets prime real estate? Why does it deserve to be in that area? I can save some space by removing it from the pad. I can get them all together like this, put them right in here, and now they're stored just like my other 12 by 12 papers. And for me, it's really, really easy. I just need to add a label right here that labels where it's from, what the paper pad was called, just so I can remember. Otherwise, it's a really easy way to make your 12 by 12 paper pads kind of work with the rest of your storage. All right, so now that you know that I'm a little obsessed with my 12 by 12 paper being stored vertically, I love these storage pockets. Let's talk about what is organizing the storage pockets and how I determined where my 12 by 12 paper would go within my craft area. I realize that not everyone has a full craft room like I do, but I still think planning out your space and determining the correct location or the most efficient location for your supplies can really help your creativity start to grow. So what are these stored on? Well, this is simply a pot lid rack. I picked these up from Amazon. It is those pot lid racks that are made to go within a cabinet or something like that to hold your pot lids up in your kitchen. They work so well in a craft room. I have used them to store planners, I've used them to store notebooks, and now I'm currently using them to store my 12 by 12 paper. This allows me to section off some different pieces so that it's not all pushed together. That can be a little troublesome as I'm flipping through. Even with the acrylic bookend or something like that, you have pieces kind of falling. This allows me to take something in and out really easily without everything else being in the way. And it also gives me the freedom to move things around, change the order. I tend to put the kits that I'm wanting to use the most, they go right up front, right here. So I know this is where I'm kind of starting as I'm going through, and then I can kind of flip through, looking through the rest of these. Eye level was also really important for me. I knew that paper is one of those supplies that I have to look through before I decide what I'm going to use. If I'm grabbing a bin of paints, I'll probably just pull the whole bin of paints out and then I can easily pick what I need. Kind of same with stickers, but if I'm gonna go through paper, I don't want to pull all of this 12 by 12 paper out. I also don't want to have to sit on the floor and kind of dig through it. So having it at a height or a level where I can actually see it and look really easily made a lot of sense to me. This is a little bit of a heavier feeling storage because 12 by 12, pretty big, takes up the whole shelf. And so for me, it made more sense to have it on this shelf as opposed to this shelf. And of course, as you go up, it would be really hard to flip through it up here. So that is how I ended up choosing where I want it to be. To me, it's really important to think through your processes. Think through how you're using certain things and what your creative process is, how you're going to kind of look for what you want. For me, I knew I had to flip through 12 by 12 paper. I don't necessarily need to take the time to flip through my stamping supplies. I'm just going to pull out my acrylic blocks and use them. So I don't need that to be in an area where I can grab it and flip through it. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of determines when I think things should be in bins and when I think things need to be kind of more out in the open. This inspires me. Seeing all the collections inspires me. It's awesome. And then here's the other thing. I set a specific amount of space. So I think this is actually 3 of these metal holders that holds the pot lids that will hold all of my supplies. I do have a little bit of room to grow, but I also know when this is full, that's it. I give myself a designated space, a boundary. I know how much 12 by 12 paper I can have, and when I exceed this amount, that means some of it has to go. That kind of triggers the destash process. It's really important to set boundaries for how much of one supply you can have. Now, if it gets full and you want to adjust that boundary, that's perfectly fine, because maybe you didn't used to be a scrapbooker and now you are, so you are growing in your 12 by 12 paper stash. That just means other choices have to be made. So for me, that would mean that I have to decide what I'm going to do with some of these papers over here, my collage papers, my smaller paper pads, things like that. I would have to make some choices in that area. So it kind of triggers the reevaluation process. Instead of just shoving things in and continuing to shove things in and force it in and then start to move it to another part of my space, when a specific boundary is full, then I kind of start to rethink, do I need it? Do I want it? Do I need to destash? How do I need to rework the space? I'd also love to talk about labeling and then bring you guys along with me as I relabel some of these. When I started using these 12 by 12 sleeves, I was super ambitious and I did these beautiful Cricut labels with vinyl. They are gorgeous. This is just removable vinyl that I cut with my Cricut machine, added it onto the front, and I think it's wonderful. However, I've come to learn that as new things come in, the odds that I'm actually going to pull my Cricut machine out, add the new labels, all of that, it's a little much. So what I'm going to do is actually just pull out my label maker. That is a quick, easy method for me. And that's just how I've learned to grow. Will it bother me that the labels don't match? Maybe a little bit. But to me, it's more important that the collections are labeled, because then I can just quickly look through, see what they are, and then find what I need. If they're not labeled, like this one, I have to pull it out in order to tell what's in it. But if they were labeled on the side, I'd easily be able to see that that's a Kelly Vang Simple Stories set. So I'm going to take a second and let's relabel. All right, so that's it. That's how I store my 12 by 12 paper in a way that allows me to access it easier, that allows me to be inspired to see what I have, which I think is so important when organizing your craft studio. And I am really enjoying this whole setup. I would love to hear from you. I love the conversation that happens in the comments when you guys share how you store your different craft supplies, because I think it sparks some good conversation and some good ideas, because how you store it might work really well for someone else. So please feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know how you store your paper, or let me know if any of these ideas kind of resonated with you. I will link things down below, including these storage sleeves and the pot lid holders that I picked up. Both of those things I picked up over at Amazon. So I will link those down in the description box below. Speaking of being inspired by other creatives, I want to give a huge shout out to my entire Patreon community. There's so much great discussion over there. They continually inspire me. It's kind of like a family that's coming together, and it really means the world to me. All of their support is awesome. There's a lot of fun things happening over on Patreon. If you want to check out my Patreon account, there's a link to that in the description box below as well. All right, I hope that you all have a fabulous day. Happy organizing, and as always, keep it creative.